Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of the Hotspur Huddle. As you can see, we have no Miss Hollie Agombar tonight. She is feeling a little bit under the weather, so Hollie, get well soon. But it is just myself and the man, the myth, the legend that is Nelson Atumba. So, Nelson, how are you, my man?
I'm good, bro. It's good to be back. Obviously, yeah, missing the queen herself, Hollie. But hoping she gets well soon. Hollie, we miss you. But yeah, ready to talk things all football again.
Yes, absolutely. The Prem is back. Hollie, I hope you haven't done a bush tucker trial because it's either celeb season, etc. But yes, Nelson, the Prem is back. International duty has stopped for a little period of time. Are you excited that the Prem is back up and running this weekend?
Absolutely. I mean, I know we had a really interesting conversation about, whether or not internationals, especially breaks like this with the Nations League, are worth it. But I think for the majority of fans out there across the country, I think it's just good to have club football back. So I'm ready and excited for some goals galore, some scrunching tackles, some crazy, hopefully, worldies. But yeah, it's good to have Prem football back. What about yourself? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's nothing like I don't think when you support a team in the Premier League, I don't think there's anything like when it's back. And obviously you do miss it for those couple of weeks. But I don't think it's just like the fact that you miss Prem football because usually, there's European games on like during the week as well. You have like your Monday night football, that kind of thing. So I think it's that side of it as well that probably myself and a lot of people do miss. But Nelson, you boys have what could be a potential tricky fixture this weekend because you entertain Nottingham Forest at the National Library. Sorry, the Emirates. So, how are you seeing this one panning out on Saturday?
Well, seeing how the season has gone so far, I would like to say that I'm not too confident heading into the game against Nottingham Forest. Let's just put it out there, Nottingham Forest. But I don't want to discredit anything that Nuno Espirito, like obviously your former manager, okay? And I actually want to point out that he's actually done a great job so far for Nottingham Forest, and the defense has been elite this season. So I don't think it will be I don't think it will be an easy game for Arsenal. I do expect us to win. I'm predicting a win, but I do think the scoreline will be very narrow. I don't think it'll be a huge scoreline between the two teams. I am hoping that Christopher Wood does not bag against Arsenal because otherwise I will drop my heads, especially after I've been raving about him for fantasy for a few weeks. But I think Nuno's got them set up really well. He's got them well drilled. I've been very impressed with their discipline, especially their defensive discipline, something that Arsenal were lauded for last season as well. I think the two centre-backs have been their star performers alongside, I think, Ola Aina, who's been great as well at the back. And then you've got, obviously, the young attacking wingers in Cho and obviously Alanga. And in that man up front as well, Christopher Wood. So the fact that as well you can mention Morgan Gibbs-White, who hasn't really played much this season, who was their talisman as well last season. It's actually scary, not scary hours, because obviously that's a phrase that we use for dreading something that's coming down. But Nottingham Forest have been really well this season, and I don't think fans would have predicted them to be within the top half of the table. So I think it will be a tricky game for the Arsenal. I do expect to win, and let's see if it happens. But yeah, I think it will be a good win for Arsenal.
Yeah, no, I'm fully expecting Arsenal to win the game, get the 3 points, but I don't think Forest are going to make it easy for you boys. I think the way they've played this season, as you mentioned, defensively been really solid, which I think has been their Achilles heel in the past. And obviously, like people can point and mention, well, that's why they've been down there the last couple of seasons. But I think Nuno's come in, and credit to him, he has made them defensively a hell of a lot more solid. But then the one thing I really like about Forest is that they're three and behind the main centre forward. Like you look at it on paper and you go, actually, that's not a bad, sort of three off of a centre from a main striker and a main centre forward. Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, Morgan Gibbs-White, as you mentioned. So they've got game changers in their team and in their forward line. So yeah, I think. Look, like I say, I think Arsenal are going to get the 3 points, but I don't think it's going to be all plain sailing for Arsenal. I think Forest are going to come and frustrate, and like I say, make life difficult. And obviously, from a Spurs point of view, now, so we head to the deck he had,
Yes, we do.
as it's been nicknamed this week. to face Manchester City. And I think from my perspective, usually when you usually have these types of games, right, it's like, oh, it's Man City, we know what they're going to do. But because like where Tottenham are concerned, like we kind of have City's number in that sense. Like we seem to always do really, really well against them. So it's one of them where, as a Spurs fan, we can feel a little bit more, I wouldn't say confident, but it's like, okay, we know we can go there and get the job done. But what are your thoughts heading into that Saturday night football?
No, I'm really glad you mentioned that, Wes, because I know before the international break when City lost their last game, I know that fans were tweeting about the fact that you lot were the next fixture, and I don't think most fans were happy that they were looking forward to playing, because you have been their bogey team in the last few years. I don't think Pep has been able, whether it's home or away, it's not just the Etihad. I think it's home as well that you guys have really had City's number, and I think you're one of the very few sides that have done that over Pep's reign here at City. So I'm actually putting you guys, I think you boys, I think, are going to be in for not for a fight, but I think you got Andrew set up properly. I think he's had some time after the loss against Ipswich to really think about how he's going to probably set up against City, and I think he's going to go for it. I think he's actually going to go for it. And I don't think Spurs fans, like you mentioned, will feel scared heading into the Etihad, especially with the recent results you've had against him. So I do think it'll be an entertaining fixture.
Yeah, no, definitely. And my mum's just popped up with a comment saying that we've got a few injuries. Mum, I would like to highlight the fact we went there last season without a centre back and still managed to get a result. So, yeah, that was a fun one in the away end, especially when Kulusevski, I think it come off his shoulder. He didn't even head it; it come off his shoulder. And yeah, the absolute limbs in the away end. And I am going to be one of the fortunate ones, one of the lucky ones to be in the away end at the Etihad. So yeah, an old stomping ground for us both, Nelson, as well. But yeah, Nelson, moving on from this weekend's fixtures, because it is mainly a Spurs show, and Spurs have decided to not cover themselves in glory, is probably the best way I can describe it, by having a little bit of a rebrand. Someone maybe in the graphic design department needed a bit of a pay rise, so decided to have a little bit of a rebrand. And I know it's really divided the fan base, but I just want to get your quick thoughts on it. I don't know if you've seen, obviously, what's gone down this week though, with the rebrand.
Did they remove the text under? Yeah.
Yes.
Just kind of left it to the obviously the cockerel, like they've just left it as it is, and I don't know if they've changed any or made any darker shades.
It looks a bit darker. It feels like 50 Shades of Blue as opposed to 50 Shades of Grey. But yeah, and I think we've also like rehashed a few old, like I think they're called monograms, that we've used in the past. But if, for example, it was an Arsenal thing to do a move something similar to what Tottenham have done, like how would you feel about that?
To be fair, from the other side of North London, we've actually done that this season, because if you look at our kits very closely, they've actually gotten rid of the badge and just put the cannon on. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the Arsenal equivalent. And I do think that actually did divide fans heading into the season, because they're used to the badge being there. And I don't know if it's been the same for you guys, but I don't know. It felt quite pointless from an outside perspective when looking at it, because like obviously the last, I think, rebrand was probably in 2006. Yes. That was the last rebrand. I do know my facts up there, guys, but no, in a sense of like that was a major rebrand, and I think it was suited for the modern times that we're in now. So to think that they've made this rebrand, but really when you look at it, it's very minimalistic. It makes you think, like you mentioned, did the graphic designer just really want to pay rise? Like I don't think it was worth it to make that kind of change. I don't think it makes much change. But maybe the club looked at it from a different perspective and thought, you know what, moving forward as well, in this new era that they're hoping with the new stadium as well, because I think that probably completes the whole rebrand. You've got the new stadium, and now you've got the logos, the new logo as well. So I think that's what the board have probably looked at from that perspective. So, what has it sort of caused in terms of fans? Like, what's been the division?
I think it's one of those where, because it almost feels like we used to be a proper football club and now we're not. And I think there's a lot of people that have been very vocal in saying that it's another move from the board to kind of detach the football side of things from the operation. So, as a lot of people know, at Tottenham, we've got the F1 go-karting track, we've got the NFL there. We have other attractions in and around the stadium. The concerts, etc. And it just feels like having Tottenham Hotspur like underneath the the famous sort of cockerel on the ball was that lasting kind of bit that us fans could keep hold of to say, look, we're still a football club effectively, and we're not a brand, a business, etc. And it just feels, I think, from a lot of fans' perspective, that the football is very much secondary, even tertiary to the other events. It's almost like the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium itself is an events stadium and it's an events arena, as opposed to it being a football stadium that hosts other events. And there's a massive difference between that. And I think you see it often in terms of marketing and branding, etc. So like I say, it feels like the other events feel more important than the football, because it feels like the other events, so like the NFL, we get a really good deal with that. Concerts, obviously, we get a really good deal on those. The F1 go-karting track, I mean, I wouldn't want to go there because it's quite expensive, but it does attract people in. Obviously, they've got a hotel being built, adjacent to the stadium. So yeah, I think from a lot of fans' point of view, it just feels like the last bit of kind of hope that the owners had and did care about the football was pretty much died, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame, because you hear that Daniel Levy in particular is a Tottenham fan, etc., but on the other hand, he then does this, and there's been loads of other bits and pieces that he's done which loads of fans haven't necessarily agreed with, not only in the short term but medium and long and previous as well. Like, he has done some good for the club as well, and we have to remind ourselves of that. But it's more like, when it comes to the football, it feels like he's made a lot of mistakes and can't always recover them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, I hear that, and that is frustrating as well, when it takes away from the simplicity of what Tottenham Hotspur should be, and that's just a football club. So
Yeah,
I understand.
no, definitely. And Nels, I think that kindly moves us on to the next point that we were going to discuss, because speaking of one of Mr. Levy's more probable and more tangible mistakes, it was the 5-year anniversary of sacking Maurizio Pochettino, arguably the best manager Tottenham have had in modern times, and a day later replaced him with Jose Mourinho. And and the only reason I'm bringing this up is twofold, because Hollie didn't want to talk about it, but she's not here. So brilliant. I'm on hosting duty, so I can talk about it. But it was a comment, obviously, that you made in our group chat about how pleased you were to find out that Poch, the gaffer, as I still call him, did get the sack 5 years ago this week. So what was it about Poch and Poch's Tottenham that had you, as an Arsenal fan, fearful and worried?
Well, I think it's a lot of Arsenal fans, I think, will point to the night where you could have beaten Liverpool to win the Champions League. That was probably the scariest night for many Arsenal fans, but I don't know, I think a bit different to other fans, and I don't think that I think that final was, I guess, a result of all of Poch's hard work over the years to get to that point. And I think I think Arsenal fans will just point to that moment, but I want to talk about everything else that led up to it, because I think we had some of the best Tottenham sides that we've seen in the history of the club. Birthing, a superstar striker in Harry Kane, unearthing a gem in Dele Alli, which is obviously MK country, as all know, as well. And also the back line, which was immense, with probably the two best centre-back pairing I've seen in a while, since obviously, I think everyone talks about Gabriel Saliba now, but I think that partnership of Alderweireld and Vertonghen was probably the best centre-back pairing in the league. So Sonny as well, who came through as well. You just had so many gems in that squad, and I think Poch had them so well drilled. You played with so much fearlessness. And I think that brought fears into many teams, especially for us, because I it was quite exciting from the other end, because for me, I kept telling you I was excited to finally see potentially Tottenham and Arsenal fight, not just for for bragging rights, but actually for trophies. And I think that happened probably in 2016 when Leicester won the title. That was probably the closest we ever got to having that. But I was hoping for more like FA Cup fixtures and Champions League fixtures where it really mattered on the line. And now, so when he did get the sack, I breathed a huge sigh of relief, because I felt, okay, well, this era has to be over, because it felt like you were really building a dynasty. And I think, I don't know if the board looked at it in a sense of Poch nearly got you there, but then he's got the squad, and the person who inherited, well, they probably hoped when Jose inherited the squad that he'd be the person to take it over the line. And that obviously wasn't the result. And obviously, again, another mistake, which we've talked about, Levy making a couple of mistakes, was obviously sacking Jose before the Carabao Cup final. So who knows what could have been had DM not make that decision. So that was why I mentioned it in the group chat, because I was so scared of those Tottenham sides. I think your average age, I can't remember what the average age was, but it was a nice blend of veterans as well as young players coming up. So I, as a football fan, take away my my attachment to Arsenal. I will actually miss that Tottenham side. The football was not terrible football. We're talking really good, beautiful football that you guys played. So that is what Poch has done for me as a fan. Watching football, he did bring some great moments. I think one in particular that I think a lot of people remember was probably the last fixture at White Hart Lane. I remember watching that game live, just because I hated United at that point and wanted to see them lose. But the atmosphere there, I know you guys probably create one of the biggest roars I've ever seen at any stadium. So I know you've got more to say than me, Wes, but that is why, Poch, that's what he brought to the league. And unfortunately, obviously, again, I think he tarnished his reputation with that move to Chelsea. I personally was, even though I'm not a fan of the club, I felt hard done by as well, because why would you make that move? Like, if Arteta went to manage you lot, then I would just be like, oh, bun him, I don't want him anymore, sort of thing. So yeah, those are my feelings, Wes. Poch brought a lot to the league, and I think I know you guys are very grateful for having him there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Poch gave me, definitely as a Spurs fan, the belief that Tottenham, little old Tottenham, could win a Premier League or a Champions League, and we were so bloody close to doing arguably both.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the team that he inherited, and the club and the state of the club he inherited, the club was all over the place, didn't know what direction it wanted to go in. He just connected everybody together. And yeah, just made us really, he had a clear philosophy, clear plan, and it was like, right, come with me on this journey and we'll see what we can do. And we were so close to hitting the pinnacle of club football. And yeah, he was, and the best thing I think for any fan is to get in a manager who understands your club and will fight and die for your club. And Poch did that at every given opportunity. And I think as a man as well, that's why it hurts so much when he was sacked. And we didn't really get the opportunity to say goodbye either, because it was in an international break. So it was one of those where he's given us, every Spurs fan arguably the best moment of their life, and we don't get to say goodbye to him. But yeah, no, I know he gave me the best moment of my life, going to a Champions League final with my dad. Like, it had to be. It's one of those things where you go, this may never happen again, so you just have to be there. And yeah, the football that we played, the games that we had, that City game in the Champions League, I was at that game. It was absolutely mental. It was bonkers. It was carnage. It was the lot. But he almost created this, like, us versus them mentality, but he didn't do it in a way that rubbed people up the wrong way, in the same way Jose, when he came into Chelsea, like, first time around, he was coming out and really trying to get under people's skin and stuff like that. Poch just did it in such a way that was like, it is us against everybody, but we're going to stick together, and I'm going to be quite humble about it. And I think, to sum up Jose's time at Tottenham, and people have asked me this before in the past, it's like, how can you sum up Mourinho's time at Tottenham? And my answer is pointless. because he had 18 months, never had a full season. Obviously, Jose had COVID in the middle of it as well. And I fairly recently rewatched the Amazon Prime documentary. And I did feel a little bit for Jose because as soon as he comes in, Ben Davis, who he pinpointed as a key player for how he was going to play, gets injured. Then Musa Sissoko, again another key player for Mourinho, gets injured, and it was like then Harry Kane, Son gets it. Like he just couldn't catch a break.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably the most baffling decision is to sack him in the week of a cup final, because regardless of your opponent, if you want anybody in world football to win you a one-off game,
It's him.
it's Jose Mourinho. It's
Absolutely.
his record. His record does speak for itself. And again, referring back to that documentary, what I've found out about Mourinho is that I like him as a person. I think he's absolute box office, but I hate his brand of football. It was just not for me, and I was I was almost like against it, just
Yeah.
like straight away, because it was the complete opposite of what we'd been on the last 5.5 years or whatever with Poch. And it was like we were jumping from one thing to another, and it just didn't fill me with much glee, much joy of like, right, yeah, this person coming in now is gonna elevate us to that next level. And actually I think we're still chasing our tail as a football club.
Yeah.
From Poch's time at Tottenham, obviously 5 years ago, as we mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's just one of those where, yeah, I think the club has definitely gone backwards, and it's typical with Spurs because we almost hit the top of the mountain, but then the fall off is so dramatic. It's outrageous, and it's almost like we can never enjoy and never have something good for too long because somebody will just snatch it away from us. So yeah, that's my thoughts and views on Poch. Absolutely love the man. Apart from last season when he was at Chelsea, that almost felt like, like an ex going to and being with one of your mates. Like it felt like your ex had cheated on you, the type of thing, or your girlfriend's cheated on you or whatever. Like it felt that bad, and it was like near enough. Apart from probably you guys, Chelsea, like West Ham, it's like any other club but them. Like why them? Why them?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like for what they stand for, like, etc. So that was the. But listen, he had his year. Chelsea didn't really do much. He's now in charge of the USA. So Gaffer, all is forgiven. All is forgiven. And I know we have spoken as well about the potential for Poch and that USA team previously. So yeah, it's definitely a much calmer time now, especially than what it was last season.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for the USA team at this point now. So yeah, for sure. I was going to ask a quick question, Wes. Do you see any similarities in what Ange is trying to do to what Poch obviously created at the club? Like just a quick and do you see any similarities or elements of what Ange is trying to do?
I see lots of similarities, and it feels like, especially when we win and we play well, there are a lot of shades of a Pochettino Tottenham team. But then when we lose or we play badly, it's like watching AVB Tottenham from like 2012, and that was horrible. That was so boring. Honestly, it would send you to sleep, type of thing. So yeah, there are, and then obviously like, and creating a culture and a philosophy. I feel like Poch obviously did that, and I feel like Ange is trying to bring that, together. I think some similarities in terms of player recruitment, going for sort of younger players, getting rid of high earners. So I know when Poch was there, we had like the likes of Adebayor, Cabal, etc., who were just sort of there picking up a bit of money, weren't really playing, weren't really that bothered, managed to get rid of them fairly quickly. And yeah, I feel like Ange's done that as well. So, but the only difference is I think Poch was kind of and was afforded a little bit more time, whereas it feels like Ange's only ever one defeat away from a crisis, and his job seems to be on the line amongst the fan base. Anyway, I think internally it's a whole different ball game, but externally it feels like I say, he's only ever one game from a crisis. So yeah, I do see a lot of similarities between the two for sure.
Wicked. I was curious to know what your thoughts were. So no, glad for you to share them.
Perfect. And obviously Spurs' opponents, as we mentioned on Saturday, are Manchester City. News broke today, Nelson, of Pep Guardiola extending his contract at City for another 12 months with the option for another 12. So it looks like we're heading into 10 years of Pep in the Prem. Is anybody going to have a chance of winning the league or any other trophies, or has Pep just got it all in the bag?
I think a lot. Well, this is hard because this man has created a lot of memes for us to enjoy over the years. And to think it would be 10 is crazy. I think Man City was the perfect club for him when he first got the job, because I couldn't see him going. The only other club I could see him coming to was our club, simply because I think he loves the brand of football that Arsene Wenger created. So when Arsene Wenger left, you're thinking Pep would be the right replacement. But unfortunately, I think what probably drew Pep to City was obviously the funds available for him to spend on, the players that he wanted. And I want to give him credit, because I think if we look at his transfers, the dynasties that he's created over these last few years, or nearly a decade, actually, I don't think, except for Jack Grealish, you're talking really shrewd signings. You're talking really good recruitment at buying players, roughly not hitting, over the 80 million mark. And we're talking players that have stayed for a number of years, and they've actually been able to sell on some players as well for even more money as well. So I just want to point that out, because I think a lot of people think, oh, City have the funds available, they can just go buy whoever they please and whoever they want. But I know Pep is very careful on who he selects to bring to his squad. And we've seen some electrifying players over the years. KDB being, obviously him not being a Pep signing, but him Pep transforming his game and just bringing it to another level, and probably, bringing him in a conversation of probably one of the greatest midfielders ever to play in the Premier League. You had the likes of David Silva coming on the back end of his career, still, gracefully playing. And I know that's one of your favorite players, Wes, Sergio Aguero as well at that time. But for him to continue on from what, Mancini had built first, and be able to build on that and build his own brand. And I don't know, I think he's a psycho, in my opinion. He's a psycho with the way he thinks tactically. He invents these new things over and over and over and over. And I think that season when he played John Stones, like in midfield, for me, I was just like, how crazy can you get? Because like, you've already got him at the back, but now you've developed this new role for him. And I'm just thinking, wow, he's a madman. And I think over the years, as fans, if we take away our attachments to our clubs, he's brought us some amazing football, some amazing players, some amazing goals, and some amazing moments, amazing memes, just amazing. So to answer your question that you initially asked, Wes, I honestly, I don't know if someone can pip that title off City. I don't care. At this point, I don't care who it is. I think whoever wins it, the whole country rejoices, because this guy has just come and made our league look like a farmers league, if we're going to be honest. Because everyone says Premier League is one of the best, if not the best league in the world. But these guys have won 4 in a row. Like, they could make it 5. He's probably won, I think, 5 out of the last 6. So people need to pay attention in the sense that he's made our league look amateur, like the way he's dominated. And we're talking, being in positions like last season, pipping Arsenal to the league title, and just having that confidence and that ooze to know that, we're champions. We're not worried. Like, he's brought this calmness to the club. And I think he's created as well a really good fan. Well, I still think, the Etihad is an Ivory. But in terms of actually what he's done for the community of City, because me and you being there as well during the era where, he first came in, you could sense that the community was much more stronger and there was more of an attachment to the club for fans. So I think the fans are very grateful for what he's done for them. So it is still not good for us, for any other fans supporting any other Premier League clubs. But who knows? I think whoever wins or pips them to the title will rejoice. We'll have a big party. and not invite them. So those are my thoughts. Whereas I know you're going to look at it from more of a tactical, not a tactical, but more of a coaching point. What are your thoughts on
Well, getting the
extending?
fan bit out of the way, Spurs might be all right because we seem to be all right against Pep and City. So, but no, I just think what he has brought to not only the Premier League but English football has just been phenomenal. Like his influence, bearing in mind he's at Man City playing in the Premier League, playing in Champions League, everything else. You've got clubs in League Two in the National League that have an ideology almost and a playing style that has come from him. This is the complete other end of football. Like it's just remarkable, and the way, and you mentioned it as well, the way he keeps innovating. So I remember his first game in English football playing against Sunderland, and he set up fullbacks really high and wide, and then all of a sudden, off the first pass, the fullbacks then move inside, and we were all like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? It was like we've never seen anything like it before. Um, we'd obviously seen at Barcelona where he had, Busquets dropping into the back line, getting on the ball, etc. But we'd never seen Pep or anybody moving their fullbacks inside. We'd never seen really a goalkeeper trying to play short. It was very much, in this country, get it long, play in the opposition half, etc. And yeah, he's brought his philosophy and his playing style over to England, and like I say, near enough every team now will have similar traits of a Pep team. But sometimes you just when you watch like your team against Man City and the way they play, you just go, this is ridiculous how they do this. Like it's a well drilled, it's a machine, it's a well oiled machine. And I remember the Centurions year.
Yeah,
Spurs are at Wembley, which is a big old pitch in itself, and you're up against a Pep team that is just going to murder you with the ball and suffocate you with the ball. And I've got my dad next to me, and I'm just like, I'm making all kinds of noises and etc. And my dad's going like, looking at me really confused, and I went, "This is ridiculous." And my dad's going like, "Why can't we stop the long ball over?" And I'm like, "Dad, they can't. You can't do it because they're just going to get you in that moment, and then they're going to penetrate." So they're going to get you on one side, switch it, bang, they're in 1v1. Bosh, have a go at that. And yeah, he's done that time and time again. And like you said, taking on players that have, and has projected them. So you mentioned De Bruyne, but you look at somebody again like Kyle Walker, who was already one of the best fullbacks in the league. He's probably made him the best right back in the world. And Kyle Walker's still performing at a really high level at his age, which is what, 33.
Yeah.
And shows no signs of slowing down. The famous "we cannot replace him" for Aguero.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you just decide to go and sign a robot in Erling Haaland instead. He bought Riyad Mahrez in, then he's gone. Now he's brought in Savinho, who is literally the spit of Mahrez. It's ridiculous. He's had like Fernandinho. Right, he's on his way out. Who can we get him? Rodri. So the succession planning in place at City has been really good. And as well, you mentioned about how particular he is in his recruitment. Watch the Amazon Prime documentary for City, and where one of I think it's the chairman, goes on about the need for a centre back, but Pep's very particular, and that's the January where they buy Aymeric Laporte. And I feel like with City, everybody goes on about, as you mentioned as well, like City with the funds that they've got available, they go and spend all this money. Actually, if you look at Pep's signings, he'll only buy one or two, but he'll spend big on those one or two. And then actually they make a profit near enough every transfer window because they've built themselves up to such a place where, they can sell, for example, like a Harwood Bellis to Southampton for 20 million. You look at like James Trafford going to Burnley, 15 million. Etc. So there's been a lot of work that I think Pep's done behind the scenes as well to get not only Manchester City in the place that it is now, and that's a more recognisable football team and brand across Europe and across the world, but I think he's done a hell of a lot for English football. And yeah, I think for me, obviously with my coaching head on, like, long may it continue, because yeah, coach education wise, he is a reference point, and he is that kind of person that you naturally as a coach, a young coach, even more experienced coaches like than me in particular, like aspire to be. Like we want our teams to, and our principles of play are very similar to Pep's, and one of his people is Bielsa that he looks up to. So you've got to give Pep his flowers, because even though he is at the top of his game, and he could quite easily just go like, lads, it's, as Fergie said, like, lads, it's Tottenham. Like, he's like, no, we still have to be at it every day in training 100%. Pep could sit in Barcelona with his feet up. Do you know what I mean? But he's still wanting, he's still got that hunger and desire to keep on winning year on year. And I think that in itself is a true testament to him as a person, I think.
Yeah, he just loves the game. That's literally it. He loves the game so much. And this popped up in my head because essentially he's coached 3 clubs, and in each era of the club, he's produced some sensational sides. So this is a question to you. Which team are you picking? 2011 Barcelona, 2000 I say 15, 16 Bayern Munich. I think that was his era. I think, or maybe 2014, 15.
Yeah.
Or the treble winning City side. Which of those 3?
Barcelona team, without question. Without question. Because without that Barcelona team, you don't get Pep moving Lahm into midfield for Bayern Munich, and you don't get this treble winning Man City team, and you don't get City playing in the way that they are without that Barcelona team. And that Barcelona team was frightening. Oh my goodness. Like, you saw the way they tore Man United apart, and Man United were like that team at the time as well. But yeah, and there's the famous Rondo clip of when Barcelona was, and you're thinking, I ain't getting stuck in that, no chance. Like, if you're in the middle of a Rondo under Pep, you ain't getting out. You'll be very lucky to get out.
Exactly.
But that team just took liberties upon liberties upon liberties, like you would not believe. So yeah, for me, it has to be that Barcelona, like, because they dominated you with the ball, and then they made you sweat without the ball as well. So you're there like, I've never come across a team in my time that was so dominant on every single level. And it was almost like 1 to 11, you could argue, was like world class as well, and at like the top of their game at that point. Whereas I think the other 2, you could make arguments whereby the players in the team weren't at that like proper, real established elite, like top end world class level. That's no disrespect or discredit to any of those players, because they were, top players. But for me, it was like that Barcelona team still gets studied now, in my opinion.
Exactly. I would have gone for 2011 Barcelona as well. Probably one of the best teams of all time as well. So yeah, that's the team I would have gone for. Like, I agree with you. Like, see, you can find leaks in the other 2 squads, but this one from 1 to 11, sensational.
Yeah, and I think that it was around that time, I think, as well, where what I noticed in particular was kids getting shirts. Like, kids were getting Messi shirts. Like, that was nothing I'd ever seen before, like, growing up. I know, football merchandise is a lot more accessible now than what it was when we were growing up. But that was like the first time that I saw people like just casually walking around in like a Barcelona shirt. And I was like, yeah, times are changing here. So yeah, I think that Barcelona team for sure was something else. But Nels, we're going to leave the Pep talk there. See what I did there? Nice little one there. And we're going to talk all things WSL, which I know is one of our favourite sort of topics. It was a big weekend in the WSL. All 6 games played at main stadiums. A couple of derbies in there as well. You must have been buzzing because your side in North London claimed bragging rights at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Exactly.
So yeah, talk to me. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. I think I watched the game live. It was a good turnout in terms of fans that were there as well. So I want to give a shout out to all the fans that turned up there. And as well, like you mentioned, just for it to be done across all main stadiums, I think that's a big big win for women's football. Obviously, I know there was a subject that I brought to you about off camera, about, Arsenal men's kind of clashing with the Arsenal women's about their Champions League game. And that, for me, I felt like was a step back for women's football. But just having this weekend alone, I think it wasn't just the Premier League, the WSL was also the Championship as well, that had it played across the main stadium. So long may it continue. But in regards to the game against at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think it was a very convincing win for Arsenal. I just felt like Spurs just weren't in it. They never really gave it a go. I got to give credit to Renee, who's really set Arsenal up very well in her time there so far. And I, for one, I think would give her the job for the rest of the season. I think taking her out now may break the stability that she's brought since Jonas has left. And sometimes that can be a huge risk that, the ball can take. And I personally think she should stay. I think she's brought life back into the club. We'll be interested to see what culture she brings to the club, what her philosophy is. But so far, I think she's got them playing with a freedom. I think there were times at the game we were very careless of giving away possession. I felt you guys could have snuffed that out and obviously taken advantage of that. But I think it was obviously Arsenal who just were decisive at the end of the day. I think that Russo goal probably in the first early stages of the game is probably a huge shock for the Spurs players. I think if you had maybe, for the first 10 minutes had probably halted Arsenal, then you're talking that, you could probably, momentum could have swung in your favour to build up into the game. But no, after that Russo goal, after 2 minutes, I think Arsenal just took full control. So, I mean, across the WSL, you're looking at United beating Leicester 2-0. I know the Merseyside derby, Everton got a really huge win against Liverpool. I know one of my mates was really excited about that because I think everyone's expecting Liverpool to go off and win, and that's obviously them off the bottom of the table now. So very big in that in the season. A very entertaining game against Villa and Crystal Palace, 3-2. I think it was a last-minute goal. I can't remember. I think it was Ebony Salmon who scored the last-minute goal, and she used to be a baller as well for Bristol City ladies. Yeah. So I think many people have forgotten about that. But the big one I think was probably the big game at Stamford Bridge with Chelsea beating City 2-0. I was hoping it'd be more of a draw for my fantasy, side of things, because I've got fantasy WSL too. But Chelsea just looked very convincing, and I think what I forgot. Forgive me because I've forgotten the new manager's name, but
is it Pastor?
I think that's it. Yeah, and she's come in and she somehow has kept the same ruthless energy that Emma Hayes had at the club, and I think she's the first person in WSL to win all her first 7 games. So Chelsea right now are on they're flying. They just don't look like slowing down. And this is people without Sam Kerr. Let's just put that into perspective.
And without Lauren James as well.
There you go. Oh, I'm done. I'm done. This is how are you doing this without your 2 best players is insane. But I think I'm very proud that that's happened this weekend for women's football, for the WSL. It's very big. I think there's a lot of viewership as well, an increase in viewership because it's been transferred to YouTube as well. So there's a lot more accessibility for fans to watch games. So it was overall a great weekend. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think North London derby. It was one of the first times I obviously managed to watch a WSL game. I don't really get many opportunities to watch them because of work commitments, etc. So yeah, when I saw that this one was on a bit more of a favourable kickoff time, I was there I was hoping to go, but obviously work meant that I couldn't. Really, really disappointing from a Tottenham perspective. I take nothing away from Russo's goal because that is a fantastic, instinctive centre forward finish. But I just felt like Tottenham, as you mentioned, were never really in it. And I think that early goal was a massive shock to the system. And then it was like, okay, what do we do now? We really struggled to get a rhythm going at any point. We were sort of huffing and puffing, the odd half chance here and there. And I don't think when we had moments and that was it, and we never really took them. Having said that, Arsenal, I thought, were very good, very, very good, really dominant. There was almost an arrogance in how Arsenal were playing. It was like, okay, there's been a lot of talk about us, but this is who we really are. And I don't want to say that Arsenal almost had a point to prove, but I think there had been okay, well, yeah, Arsenal coming off the back of that Champions League game against Juventus, everything else that was that's been going on for them this season. It was kind of all right, it's the big game. like, let's see what you're about, really. And I think they answered all of those questions really, really well. Yeah, I don't really feel like Arsenal were ever threatened or in any doubt like throughout the game. And yeah, it was just a real dominant performance, I think, from Arsenal. But yeah, I know you mentioned the Merseyside derby as well. I mean, how that's given as a penalty, I don't know. And I know that's bring up the talk of like VAR,
Yeah.
etc. Or like a lighter version of VAR because of obviously the stadia that the women play at. It may not be fit for
Yeah.
purpose to have full VAR in there, but I think some form of technology in the WSL would be great for decisions like that, because if that decision may then impact on Liverpool season, like further down the line, manager could lose his job, and then you look back at that moment and you go, well, that one decision that hasn't gone our way
Yeah.
that could affect it. But yeah, and then to mention Chelsea, they are just on a hot streak, relentless. It almost feels like the managers come in, and as you said, Emma Hayes was ruthless. It was like, no, but this manager's going to another light. They don't look like they're going to concede. They don't look like they're gonna get beat, or they don't feel like they're in danger at any sort of point or in any moments like throughout the game. And I think Chelsea just take care of business at the moment. And I think that is a really good place for them to be in scary hours for the rest of the WSL, because it looks like they are going to be unstoppable pretty much. As we highlighted there, without their two best players in Sam Kerr and LJ, Lauren James, and it's like, well, you bring those two back into the fold, there's goals galore between just those two players.
Oh man.
And the little bits that I did catch, it was almost like Chelsea kind of just cast City aside, and it looked like City were like a mid-table, like bottom end of the league kind of team, and that's a scary thought and a scary issue. Like, obviously Bunny Shaw didn't really have many opportunities throughout the game and stuff like that, and she's one of the best strikers around. So, but yeah, I am with you though. Really big weekend for WSL. It was nice for majority of games to be played, or if not all the games, sorry, in WSL and Championship to be played at main stadia. I think the fact it's in an international break helps. So if for the men, so if there is another opportunity like that further down the line, then I think the WSL and the Women's Championship should really take that up, so we get more traction for the league, and hopefully more people can get out and support their women's equivalent of the team that they support.
Absolutely.
So Nels, it's coming up to your actual favourite time of the show now, FPL. I'm not going to bring the teams up because those of you that were eagle-eyed and watched us last week will realise that we've probably not even changed our teams from last week. We're not going to lie, because it's international break, so we've kind of left it. But Nels, coming into this game week and potentially future game weeks, FPL players, what do they need to do?
Where do we start? I think
Put Chris Wood in their team, because
no, because I think Nottingham Forest right now, whereas they've got I think after the game this weekend, I think next week they've got a game against Ipswich. So if you're looking for a one-punt week where you're looking to bring in a couple players, I always kind of recommend people to target the Ipswich and Southampton games. But then saying that after buying Solanke last week, 2 weeks ago, thinking that he'd do something, hasn't turned out. So scrap that. I think players to look forward to. I think Arsenal have a good run of fixtures up until game week 19. We're talking within the difficulty of 2 and 3 rating out of 5. Newcastle United, they've slowly been creeping back up. Lewis Hall has been a great player so far in those last 5 or 6 games. He's had a run of successive starts, and I think he's one to look out for in defence. I also think, obviously, the main man up top you've benefited from him as well. Alexander Isak scored as well for Sweden in international break, so I think he's coming on a really good run of form, and I think he's someone to look to recruit. So I would recommend anybody getting some Arsenal players, getting Alexander Isak or Lewis Hall. I think Johan Wissa for Brentford has been very good. from a fantasy perspective. Since he's been back, he's actually had more points than Mbuemo, even though they've kind of assisted and scored a couple of times. Another pair to look out for. Chelsea have some great fixtures coming up. I think, the main man himself, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson is up there as well. And Wolves. Wolves have a good run of games coming along. And I benefited from having Mateus Cunha on my side. And I think he's one to look out for. A very underrated player. Ryan Ait-Nouri is a very good player to look out for too. So I think those are the players you kind of want to look out for. I think your Wolves, Newcastle United, you got your Arsenal. Any one punt weeks, you're probably looking at Nottingham Forest game week 12. United have, I think, Ipswich and Leicester coming up. No, they face Leicester. They have Ipswich and I think Southampton coming up. So you could go for Bruno Fernandes there, especially with Anarim coming in and doing his thing. So those are the players I kind of, from the top of my head, those are the players I say you should look out for. I think from game week 12, 13, Brighton is a great shout for fixtures. I know you mentioned potentially wanting to bring back João Pedro, who's come back on a run of form. So I don't think he got selected for Brazil because everyone gets worried for the teams or the players that, play in South America with the travel and coming back. But I don't think he was selected. So I think he could be good to go. But always, like I've been recommending, wait for the team news to come out and then make your transfer. So that's my recommendations. Have you got anybody that you were thinking of? I know you mentioned Liam Delap as one.
Yes.
Any others?
Yeah, Liam Delap for me, obviously watching him up close and personal a couple of weeks ago. As a player, I have this feeling he's going to go right to the top. I think the way he goes about his work is very underrated. And I'm surprised he hasn't got his flowers. I know he's bagged a couple of goals already this season, but I think his all-round play, I would think that me personally, if I'm Thomas Tuchel, he's somebody that I'm looking at to try and get in and around that England setup at some point.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely think he's that good. A player that I was going to throw your way, Nelson, was Anthony Gordon. Because as we know, a few weeks ago, he's whipped in the most delicious cross, better than a hot cross bun. It was that delicious for Alexander Isak. And I think, as you mentioned there, with Newcastle's run of fixtures, he's a player that gets goals and assists. So he's potentially one that I would look at. I know one of your personal favourite players in the league, Harvey Barnes, as well. I know you've had a long-standing love for Harvey Barnes. Was also thinking about Antoine Semenyo. However, I think Bournemouth's fixtures coming up are a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. So one week they might play a team, for example, like up there in, for example, Aston Villa, for example, and then the next week they're playing a team sort of lower down the league. So yeah, I'm getting my head around FPL. So but I'm thinking of Anthony Gordon coming into my team and potentially replacing Jared Bowen, because Bowen's not been hitting it. Although, having said that, he is West Ham's top goal scorer this season, but then West Ham have just been really off the boil this year. So yeah, that's what I'm toying with at the moment, is to swap out Bowen and maybe get somebody in like Gordon if the transfer budget it allows, basically. So that's who I'm going for. But yeah, Liam Delap as well. I genuinely think as well, in that United game, he's going to cause United a few problems defensively, because especially with Amarin coming in, setting up with a back three, I think it's going to take a little bit of a while for United to get used to it. So with that in mind, I think Delap might get a little bit of joy out of United this Sunday. So yeah, those are my picks, my players to look out for. But yeah, as well, João Pedro, I think he's going to come back fit and firing, and maybe score some goals. But the thing is, with Ursula, he likes to rotate Welbeck and João Pedro, so that is really annoying and really frustrating, because it's like the one week you put Welbeck in your team, it's João Pedro that starts, and vice versa. So I've been caught out with that a few times earlier on in the season. So yeah, that's definitely killed me. But yeah, like I said, I think my top one is probably Anthony Gordon, because I think Newcastle have got a decent run of fixtures as well. So that's who I'm going for.
Wow, I think we need to give Wes a little round of applause because this guy has come on leaps and bounds from the first game week of the season. From looking at it more from a fan perspective, he's actually put his coaching head on and also looked at it from, like he's actually understood. You've caught on really quickly. So I actually think second half of the season, if you add your points, you might win like that sort of table, second half of the season table, because you probably have figured
I'm
out
hoping so. I'm
what to
hoping
do.
so. But yeah, I think I went too far the other way at the start of the season. I kind of went full sort of football manager mode and went, right, my team needs balance. It needs this, it needs
Yeah.
that, da, da, da. And then it was like, no, this isn't how it works. Like, what's going on? So yeah, slowly but surely, I think I'm creeping in.
Yeah.
I'm catching up to Hollie as well. Actually, I'm not far off of Hollie. So Hollie, if you are listening or watching, I'm coming for you. All
Yeah.
right, this is the game week that I'm going to get you because I've picked up 110 points over my last 2 game weeks. So yeah, fingers crossed I can start climbing up the leagues a little bit more. But Nelson, I think that is it. We are done. That wraps us up for tonight. Great chat as always. But where can everybody find you doing your thing?
You guys can find me on Instagram at n_natumba. So first letter N and then my last name Natumba 25, n_natumba 25 on Instagram.
Fantastic. And where can everybody find me? Well, you should know by now, Wezo10, sorry, is the unofficial Moussa Dembele fan account, usually tweeting things about the best Belgian to ever grace the Premier League, bar none. Instagram's at Wezo32. As I mentioned earlier, I'm at the Empty Ad on Saturday, the Decky Ad. So I will be there. So if anybody does recognize me from doing a podcast or whatever, then please come and say hello. And then for all football coaching stuff, it's Kickoff Football Academy or Code for MK across your socials. And that is a wrap. But before we do go, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe, drop a comment in the comments box, and we shall see you all very, very soon.